Hi there, this is Shilpa with PaperTrl. Today's video is going to cover how to set up PaperTrl the very first time you log in. So at this point, you should have received an email that gave you your login information, and hopefully you already set up your password. If not, go back to your email, find that email, and set your password, and then come back and see me again. So we'll get here to the login screen, and you will log in with the information that you were given. And once you log in, you will see our dashboard. On this dashboard are a couple things that will be important to you. Across the top here, you see multiple tiles, and those are shortcuts. And as you become more familiar with the software, you might want to use those to navigate around the system just a little bit faster than you might at the beginning. At the bottom of this, as you start to process invoices and pay them and approve them and you know, kind of get things moving, you'll start to see some reports down here that will just show you activity and give you some dashboard data on where you are with your AP. But what we're going to focus on right now is across the left-hand side of the screen and this menu. This menu is pretty much your pilot seat for operating through PaperTrl. Vendor Trail gives you all of the operational functions that you need to actually run your accounts payable. That is another video that you should probably watch following the one that we're going to go through today. Today we're going to go into the admin portal, and I'm going to show you how to set everything up so that you can begin your operations. So we were going to go through these menu items in order that they are listed here on the screen. So the very first one that you want to focus on is role management. And I'd like to start by giving just a super high level description of what each of these are before we actually dive into the screen so you can see them. Roles are basically the access that a user will have, and it describes what they're allowed to see, what they're allowed to change, what they're allowed to delete, and so on. The approval levels define what they're allowed to approve, if anything. So you might have users that only submit invoices or maybe take a look at them but don't review them. You'll have others that have maybe a level 1 approval, whatever that happens to mean in your company, and others that have a level 2 or level 3. That's where we'll set that up. The workflow then defines exactly what sequence of approvers you want for an invoice. So if it's a $5,000 invoice and you just have a single person who's allowed to approve that, you will be able to set that up here. If you have a much larger invoice and it needs 3 levels, you will get to set up that flow here in Workflow Management. Users then is exactly what you would expect. This is where you are going to set up the individual users, assign them, you know, a name, their email address, and allow them to set up their passwords. And this is where you'll assign them a role and an approval level as well. And then the code management is the area where you will put in all of the different approval or rejection codes. These might be codes from your accounting system that match your GL. They might be a different set of codes that you use specifically to manage projects. This really can be whatever you need it to be so that you know when a line item on a particular invoice is approved or rejected, you know why. So with that, let's jump right into roles. So every screen in PaperTrl looks pretty much the same. So you can expect to see breadcrumbs up here at the top so that you know exactly where you are. So here we're from home into role management. You'll see 2 tabs at least at the top. Sometimes there's more. But you'll always see a search screen that shows you what information is already in the system based on the area that you're in. In this case, these are all the roles that were already set up. And you'll see a create where you can create new. So as I mentioned, this is where we are setting up roles in the company. And first I'll show you a quick example of what one of the roles might look like. So you can go into, let's say, the finance controller here, and you want to look at the detailed view of that role. And what this is basically doing, it is telling you, based on the menu down here on the left-hand side, it is telling you which specific functions within those menus you are giving access to that particular role. So in this case, we're allowing the controller to do just about everything, and you can see that because of the way that items are checkmarked. But let's go back and let's look at the vendor. And if you look at the vendor, you can see that the vendor has much more limitations in terms of what they can't see. They can't see anything in the admin portal because clearly we don't want them to be setting up users or roles or anything along those lines. And within the vendor trail itself, we want them to be able to upload invoices and review them before they submit them, maybe fill out a form, but we don't want them to be approving them. So in order for you to set this up, you would need to decide how you want to structure your roles, and then you would click on Create, enter the name of what your specific role is going to be called here, and then you'll be able to click in and select which activities you want to give permissions for that specific role. Moving on to approvers. And again, these are approval levels so that when an invoice is submitted or an expense report, it really just depends on what type of AP we're talking about here, how you want to set up those specific groups that are approvers. In this case, we have an accounts payable group set up, project manager. We don't necessarily need a vendor in this case, but there could be times where you might want that to happen. Audits, admins, however you need to set that up for your company, you would set that up. Again, same thing. If you click on actions, just like on the other screen here, you can get in and you can see what the names of the levels are, and you can create new ones. And in this case, you're literally just creating the name of what that approval level is. And in the next step, when we create the workflows, is when you will assign where those levels fit in the sequence of approvals. So let's go ahead and switch to the workflow. So when you create a workflow, you can decide however many levels you want and which groups are assigned to each level. So again, you can click on the actions to see one that is already created, to see the detail, or to edit it, but let's go ahead and create a new one. Let's say that for this new workflow, we want to create a 3-level approval. And let's say that you have some kind of, for expenses. Your first level of approval, maybe you want it to be somebody who's in accounts payable to be approving that one. You simply click on Add New to select the second level. Whoops, I deleted it instead. Sorry about that. Click the wrong button. Click on that little arrow there. And maybe at that point you want an audit user to be able to click to be the one who is going to be the second level of approval. And then from the third, I did it again. Click on the arrow, not the minus sign. And let's say we have an admin who's doing the final level of approval. And you click Create. That workflow is then created and can be assigned, and it's right down here, number 6, and can be assigned to a specific vendor so that that vendor's invoices can be approved using that. Or in this case, if it's expenses, we would have an expense. That would be the flow that would be used for your expense reports. Now that you have kind of the basics set up, you know what roles are available, you know what approval levels are available, and you know which workflows you have created, the next thing you do is start to add your users. These users can be users who are submitting invoices. They could be users who are approving invoices, or they could be users who just want to have visibility into what's going on with AP. And again, that would be based on how you define the roles. So in this case, you'll see here that there is a third tab at the bottom, or I'm sorry, at the top of the screen here, that allows you to upload a user list. So if you have multiple users and you would like to set it up via an Excel spreadsheet, this gives you the ability here to download the file format first. It will give you an Excel spreadsheet that gives you the format. You would fill out that Excel spreadsheet, and then you would bring it right back in here, drop it into the box, click upload, and all of those would automatically create. But in this case, I'll just show you how to create an individual one. And here you would just enter a name. You would create a user ID for them. You would select what their approval level is going to be. So maybe they're a project manager. And so in your company, the project managers are the first to review invoices just to make sure that the invoice is accurate and for a legitimate expense. You can put a picture in if you would like. Then you're going to give them their, you're going to put in their email address, because just like you did when you set up the software initially, they will receive an email so that they can set up a password and log into the system as well. You can put in an employee number, and this is also where then you select the role. And so here when you select the role, again, it's giving them the ability to access the software. You'll set the status to either active or inactive, and obviously when you're setting up for the first time, I assume you'll do active. But if that person would happen to leave the company or for some reason no longer be part of any of these processes, you can set it to inactive so that they won't have any rights within the software. And then you set up an initial password for them, which they will change once they actually get into the software themselves. So the last step for the setup is the code management. And again, like I said, the codes are what is going to be used either at an invoice level or a line item level. It depends on how you choose to do it. It will give you the ability to put in a code that describes how that expense or where that expense should be applied. Two ways, actually, I'm sorry, in this case, there's a one way to create new codes, and that is to upload them. So similar to the way that we could upload users here, you would download a charge code template. That Excel spreadsheet would give you the format in which we would need you to put your codes in and descriptions. You would take that file after you've saved it somewhere on your desk, and you would upload it here into this box and then click upload. Once you've done that, all these charge codes would be listed here along with their descriptions. You can set them again to active or inactive just by clicking on the actions button, and you'll see the status of it over here to your right. And then as you are approving invoices, all of these codes will become available to that approver to assign the proper charges to the proper codes. Once you've taken these 5 steps here, setting up your roles, setting up your approval levels, creating workflows, adding all your users, and uploading your codes, you are ready to begin using the software. So thank you for listening to this video on how to set up PaperTrl. If you have any questions, you can always call PaperTrl. The phone number is directly on our website, but for faster answers to your questions, every screen has this little question mark here in the upper right-hand corner, and by clicking on it, it gives you access to our customer manual, which is an online source to allow you to basically get context-specific help. So whatever page you're on, it is going to take you to that specific page and show you how to work within that page. In addition to that, you do get the entire menu on the left, so that if you want to see something different, you can click on any of these items here to get that information. So thanks again for listening, and I hope to see you in the next video.